To get started with the interview, if you could just introduce yourself, and I know you have recently become the CEO of the Texas to Cradle to Career organization. So if you could just explain that position a little bit, that kind of thing.
Okay, be happy to. So, Mattie Parker, and I am the CEO of Fourth Cradle to Career and the Tarrant 2 and 3 Partnership, which is a new nonprofit organization we founded at the beginning of 2020 with the purpose of creating a true education cradle to career collective impact organization. To try to explain that, the Tarrant 2 and 3 Partnership is a new initiative that was founded alongside at the same time. And its focus on post-secondary readiness for our students across Tarrant County. Additionally, though, we're working on partnering with 3 other organizations in Tarrant County that have been in existence for quite some time. In early education, focus on third grade literacy, and then a holistic family approach to how early child education all the way up to workforce really impacts families positively. And so I've been tasked to put all those things together. Previously, I was the chief of staff for Mayor Price and City Council, and that's where I got to meet you, of course, in class. That's a position I had for about 6 years. My career's really been in state, local, and national politics. I also went to law school and practiced law briefly. And so this is a new venture for me. And I decided it was an important work and something that I could try to put my talents to and help spearhead the right change we need in Tarrant County.
Okay, so what part of your background do you think has led you to this new position?
Good question. I think it's building like community capacity, identifying problems, being really solutions oriented, and then of course leveraging the private sector and public sector together, which is always necessary, especially when you're solving problems. But what's interesting in education, that really hasn't been a focus up to now. In my opinion, a lot of times it's business, private sector, families complaining about education, but not knowing how or being willing to do anything to change things. And so when I've seen in any sort of social issue in our communities, we are better served when people work together and focus on how to partner. And I think this collective impact organization has the real potential to create that cross-sector collaboration in a way that really makes change. So what does that look like? First, it's telling the story, right? What is happening in public education in Tarrant County? And for us, it's not about high school graduation. It's not about going to college. It is what is career success for students. That's our North Star goal. We think all students should have the ability to make a living wage, have a high wage career that allows them to take care of their families. But up to now, our opinion is the education system hasn't been really serving that purpose. And the result is only about 22% of the 8th graders in Tarrant County make it to a 2-year or 4-year credential. And then along with that, when you compare that to the job demand, about 70% of the jobs in North Texas right now require some kind of a credential. Therefore, you're knocking all those students out of the potential to really have a higher wage, living wage job, which is really critically important. So it's not just about, hey, you need a degree. It's more than that. It's like that degree really leads to, or credential, 2-year, 4-year associates, whatever it may be, to a real career path. And then those results are actually worse for kids that grow up in an economically disadvantaged household.
So it's all about like building a better foundation for the future.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So what does leadership mean to you, and how do you feel that your leadership style has advanced you in your position?
So for me, I've had the pleasure to work for and be around a lot of different types of people with very different leadership styles. And I think in my 20s, especially, and maybe early 30s, I was able to sit back and watch, learn, take note, see what was effective, what wasn't, work alongside them. I probably was fortunate at a really early age in my career, just based on the field I was in. I was empowered to be a leader. I was empowered to make important decisions because things move quickly in political offices, and you have to have, the people I've worked for at least, staff didn't work for them for long if they weren't efficient and good at their jobs and high caliber. So if you were one of those people, you kind of had to be in the inner circle of trust pretty quickly, and then you were empowered to make really decisions on behalf of whoever's name was on the door. But everybody does things differently. I think my style has evolved now that I'm in a place where I am leading other people and the buck stops with me, so to speak, of what it looks like for people to feel empowered and excited to get up every day and go to work. And importantly, feel like they have autonomy to make decisions and they're not micromanaged.
Okay.
So all those things lead me to believe that the strongest leaders listen more than they speak. They are inspirational. They support. They lift up other people in their organization, regardless of what their position is. Like, what do they want to be doing next? Never hold anybody back, and just try to facilitate in some ways like a mentor would. What do you want to accomplish in life, and in long term, short term goals, whatever those may be, and how does this current position serve that purpose? And always looking for upward mobility for individuals. In addition to that, and I feel like I'm now tasked with the responsibility, and I was in the mayor's office as well, what does it look like to lead in the community outside of your organization? And that does take a lot of inspiration. You want people to follow you or listen to what you're saying because they're excited when you stand up to speak, or when you're calling on them to take action, that you have a lot of hope and aspiration for our community. And as otherwise, if I was Debbie Downer, no one's going to want to listen to me, right? Like, we have a lot of problems, we have solutions to go along with those.
Okay, next question. How do you measure success, and how did you learn from your failures?
Good questions. So, learning from failures, I'll take that one first. It's cliche that everybody says, like, failure makes you stronger, like, all those things, which is very true. But how you handle times of difficulty or crisis or failure, do you take the time to reflect on those failures and wish you had done things differently? I can think of a few examples when I was in the mayor's office, and I wouldn't say these were just my failures. They may have been city failures or things we took action on because things were quick. And in retrospect, I step back now and I think, man, I wish I had been able to handle that differently. I wish our team had. I wish leaders had. But that doesn't do you any good if you don't really take the time to think about what you would have done differently. Mm-hmm. But it's also important not to dwell, because if you do that, then you really get stuck longer term. What was the other part of your question, Tamara?
How do you measure success?
Does it feel right? Mm-hmm. Right is one thing, which is anecdotal. Like, do you feel like people are enjoying working for you? Do you feel like people are inspired? Do you think that you're making momentum, movement in the community? But then it's also, we do have to focus on data and outcomes, especially in this new work I'm doing in education. So we will measure success by how students are performing. And we always say, since we've started a year ago, we will not be here years from now if what we're doing isn't working. Because we're not going to be just a nonprofit looking for money and just feeling really good about it every day. Yeah. No, it's more than that. It's how are we actually serving the community. And the same could be true in other positions where I attempted to do this in certain settings depending on the circumstances. But, if we were going to go out with an initiative in the mayor's office, or we were going to hold a forum, or we were going to have a really contentious vote at City Hall, whatever the issue may be, like, what does success look like to us in those situations? And talking about that before you go into to look for the end result, if that makes sense.
And that kind of leads into another question I had. Could you specifically give 2 to 3 examples of how essentials that you feel are important to empower others? So whether that's building education in a community or that kind of thing.
So to empower others, honestly, I really, really believe at the end of the day, you can't empower or mobilize or get anything done if you're not a kind person. People don't want to be around you. If you're not warm and people appreciate that you're real with them, your candor, all those things. But I also think you need to be motivational. I think people need leaders more than ever right now. People are starving for someone to take a stand, say what they're going to do, and then actually do what they said. So, and I'm reminded about that often. I need to be careful with my words. If I say I'm going to do something, people are going to rely on me and look to us for solutions and for example. So you can't disappoint in that way. And then empowering people that aren't always at the table. There's a lot of conversation about racial equity, what equity looks like, and who's missing. That is true, Cameron. It is always, to me, a better result when you have multiple different perspectives sitting around a table. And it doesn't mean you have to listen to all of them or do what those people say, but you can incorporate their perspective into a final decision, especially when you're in any kind of public service type role. And I still consider this to be a public service type role.
Okay, great answer. What experiences have shaped you as a leader? I know you've gone from the City of Fort Worth to this new project. Do you feel like you've taken anything from the City of Fort Worth, from the mayor's office, to this new position that has helped you?
Oh, 100%, absolutely. I think, well, first of all, I wouldn't be in this position had I not had the previous position, right? So that's just a lesson in, I mean, I haven't interviewed for a job, Cameron, since I was probably 21. And I don't say that to brag, I just say that, like, when you work hard and you show up and people watch you work, good things can happen. The next thing leads to the next thing, if that makes sense. So a few good examples is in the mayor's office, things move really quickly. You're always in chief, a mile wide, you have a lot of different things on your plate. So what I learned about that experience is there is extreme value in being able to pivot and handle a crisis, but man, is it beautiful to be able to pause and take time to really work on solutions. So sometimes based on personality of leaders, and my job in the mayor's office was hard because I really represented both the council and the mayor. So they didn't always get along or always have the same solution in mind or the vote in mind. So I was always feeling like I was scattered, like to fix it everybody. Everybody needs to agree. That's just not going to happen. So trying to learn to take a little more time and being thoughtful at the end of the day, letting the decision that I make be well thought out. I think it's also important for me in particular, and this definitely had an impact. I grew up in a really small town on a ranch. You know, I grew up my graduating class was 42 kids. I was always a leader in my class and always did all the sports and did all the things and was an athlete and you know, really serious about academics. And I got to go to UT as a freshman. But growing up in a small town and arguably growing up in a bubble, right, outside of the way other kids have grown up, has served me really well. Because I had to figure out early on if I wanted a different life, even though I had college educated parents. If I didn't want to be in Idaho, for instance, if I wanted to go see something different and grow, that was on me to make it happen. And I think that's really impacted me as well. The other thing that I always try to talk to young people about is you can't be a victim. You cannot worry about what happened to you or what's not fair or this professor did this to me or this boss is really a jerk. Like, it's your life. So what do you want to do to empower yourself? You cannot dwell and be a victim and have that mentality because it will only hold you back.
Do you feel like anyone has really been a major influence in your life to set you up for these ideas and that kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think everybody I've worked with or for, when I was young and working in Speaker Tom Craddock's office, he was that Texas House Speaker when I was, I guess I took that job. Well, I first worked for him when I was a junior in college, so I was 20. And he had a chief of staff named Nancy Fisher. Nancy helped build a staffer, a lobbyist in Austin for a long time, and she went in-house city chief of staff. I still write her letters every other year or so just to check in. The way she led people was phenomenal. Because not only was she a woman in a man's world, but she did it with grace and no chip on her shoulder. She was really funny. You knew she meant business. You weren't going to step on her at all. She even gave fashion advice, Karen, in a way that wasn't awkward. To those of us that were younger, don't wear that dress because look what people say. And that sounds so silly, but it was so impactful to be. Otherwise, she wasn't intimidating. I could have been really intimidated by her. And then I would have never wanted to bring things to her that I was concerned about. And she and I got close because I really was eyes and ears for the family on the other end of the hallway. And I was his executive assistant. I saw all the things that happened. I was the gatekeeper. So she really relied on me to bring things to her that were going to impact the office and brought me in a circle. And I have a really close friend who was my boss at one point when I was an intern in her office, and how she treated me and empowered me was really important. And even really tough bosses. So I worked for Congressman Kay Granger, and I worked for her for a long time. And I guess it was 6.5 years, which is in her world was a very long time. She doesn't keep people long. And I don't say that to be a critic. To be a critic, Kay, I wouldn't want to go back and work for her. However, I really have a tremendous respect for the way she conducts business and the way she ran her office at the time. It made me better to be. I mean, she takes no little fault. Like, there is no room for error. And that can be stressful, and I wouldn't say it was healthy at times, but at the same time now, I mean, I'm better for it. Absolutely. And there's certain things about her leadership style that I always appreciated. One good example is she had an open door policy. She met with who needed to see her, and she didn't talk a lot during those meetings. And that wasn't because she wasn't paying attention. It was they were there to talk and tell them their story, rather than her yapping on about how great she was, which I always appreciated.
Yeah.
And then, when I compare her to some other folks I've worked with in recent years, one, of course, is Betsy. She's this gregarious, fun, I'm going to remember what your grandkids' names are. I'm larger than life, and everyone wants to be around me. And it's that charisma is addictive. It's so fun to be around, right? And because of that charisma and her heart, people want to follow and do better, be better, do what she's saying, those things. So, but I'm kind of now that I really think about it, it's a great question for me to reflect on. I'm probably a combination of those things, right? I'm probably a little more serious than sometimes Betsy is, but at the same time, I don't want to be overboard. I think my staff to fear me, which I think Kay instilled fear a lot of times.
Do you feel like you have any weaknesses, like professionally weaknesses or professional strengths that have really helped you?
Yeah, good. Okay, so weaknesses would be, despite the fact that I'm a female, I'm sometimes not very emotional and or sensitive. So, I mean, I've had staff members currently and before just really need to talk it out. You're really sad about something. I'm just like, ugh. So that's a fault. I need to be more patient about that. I am definitely more high level vision than really in the details and to be really detail oriented. I always have been. And law school was good for me, and practicing law was really good for me because it forced me to be detail oriented. I know I can do it. I just don't enjoy it, right frankly. And that's okay. But that's just something I've acknowledged over time.
That's interesting because I feel like in your line of work, you have to be very detail oriented. But I guess when you think about it, you're just trying to get to the future. So
yeah, that's a good point. It's several things. So great example would be in my day-to-day, I don't feel like I'm detail-oriented, but man, do I notice the details. Does that matter? Yeah. So if a staffer brings a speech to me, I can notice things so much faster than most people in my staff, just because I know what problems can arise. Or and I also, because I think of myself more as a visionary, even if the words are pretty and it's organized well, if we're not making the vision happen, if we're not furthering that larger goal, then that gets scrapped, if that makes sense. And part of it may be I'm just at that place in life personally where I've got 3 kids and I'm busy and I'm running a household and I'm running a job. So, maybe someday I'll be less scattered and my inbox will have 2,000 emails in it. Maybe I'll be better at doing it. I don't know.
Okay, and finally, what do you want your legacy to be?
I want to leave this place better than I found it. So what does that mean? It means a variety of things. First of all, your family is most important. Like, what kind of children that you raise and put into the world is really important. It's something that David and I talk about a lot. When it comes to work, I want to do transformative things, right? People always like to ask me, lately I thought these questions would have a lot. Like, when are you going to run for office? When are you going to do this? And I'm like, I don't know. Right now, I feel like my purpose for transformation, change that is positive, is right here. So when it stops feeling like it's transformative or it's run its course, then I'll think about the next step. I did the same thing in the mayor's office. I loved the job. It was awesome. I was on autopilot. I could handle all the things, even if it was a police officer shooting. But I felt like am I really making change? Am I really, going to be transformative? So, and it's funny, Cameron, even I've had interns that are your age or a little bit older. When I meet them, like, I'm going to run for office one day. I'm going to do this. I'm like, that's awesome. But man, it's almost like why John McCain was so popular and was served for so long. He didn't plan that, right? He didn't plan to be a POW. He didn't plan any of those things, but all those things made him a better leader. And I think if people really think about that sometimes, you don't have to have your name on the door.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a CEO to be a leader.
Well, that was a great interview. Thank you so much. I loved all your insight and everything.
Of course.
That's all that I have for today.